to ensure that the positioning of these individuals that you see here on camera is precise.
And that level of detail is something that I see Ms. Dorset nodding her head approvingly for. That, how do you see the similarities between individuals like this, members of the Foreign Service, aiming for excellence and precision, Ms. Dorset?
Listen, you know the expression, the devil is in the detail? I have had many people do, how shall I say, not a silent stoops, but you can see the stoops on their inside. They wouldn't let it out when Mrs. Dorset would insist on certain details, because it is those little things that would really trip you up and can demolish all the work that you have done in preparation if you do not pay attention to detail. So I was not very popular at the time, I'm quite sure. But I insisted that protocol officers get into the habit of looking at details, because that is where you can miss it.
And speaking of details, the significance of the red berets, please, Lieutenant Khan.
So those servicemen and women wearing those red berets belong to the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force Reserves. They are possibly not as well known as the regiment, Coast Guard and Air Guard, but certainly a very important part of the Defense Force. They are comprised of a couple different types of personnel. So you have the permanent staff that manage the affairs of the large majority, which is the volunteer staff. And the volunteer staff are those persons who have careers in the outside world, in the civilian world, and they also serve their country because of a particular skill set or experience that they may have that the country may be required to call upon from time to time.
And one such from their ranks was called upon to be the previous aide-de-camp in the form of, I believe, Major Leslie Mohammed.
Indeed, indeed. Major Mohammed was actually the aide-de-camp to Her Excellency up until the time of her mandatory retirement based on age. So yes, and reservists serve roles alongside soldiers, sailors and airmen throughout the country, right? There are very, very few limitations in terms of the roles that they are able to serve.
And speaking of that serving and that service with pride, who comprises the Guard of Honor?
So the Guard of Honor is comprised of members of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, Coast Guard, Air Guard, and Reserves. The Guard is split into two components. So the first part of the Guard is comprised of Regiment and Coast Guard, and the second part comprises the Air Guard and the Reserves, and they flank either side of the combined color, the massed color party as we refer to it.
And I guess we're getting some of that information at this point in time from the House announcer.
We are indeed.
The Chief Justice and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, they will have a major part to play in the swearing-in ceremony, and of course, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Paula May Weeks, ORTT, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Ms. Dorset, one of the things that we were speaking about a little earlier is how it is we get our reference points, knowing the things that we stand on in terms of protocol, the rules, the language of it. And speaking of language, there was a question that has been asked previously about how do we refer to the spouse of the president, or in this case, the president-elect coming to be the seventh president. So how do we treat with that?
As far as I am aware, he would have to have His Excellency. It's not just Mr. Kerwin Garcia, because in the same way it happens with the female spouse, Her Excellency, when the office holder is male. Similarly, with the situation where the office holder is female and there is a spouse.
Thank you so much for that. And remind me once again the order in which we can expect the individuals who are coming to take the major days, please, Lieutenant Khan.
So we would have the president-elect arriving first. She would have been selected as the president-to-be, but at this point in time, she holds no formal office in government or state. So she would be the lowest on the order of precedence, followed by the Chief Justice, followed by the Honorable Prime Minister, followed by Her Excellency Paula May Weeks. And of course, that order would then shift with the transition of the presidency from the outgoing, as you will, to the incoming.
Are we seeing some Coast Guard at this point on our monitors?
We are indeed. So we're seeing the the first half of the Guard, which comprises members of the regiment and Coast Guard. Facing them, they would be to the left of the mast color. So all four formations of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force have sent members to be part of this Guard of Honor for Her Excellency. And we see represented all the colors of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, as well as the presidential color.
So take us through those colors, thank you. So you say, yes, they represent these components, but which color represents who?
So the first color, which we refer to as the senior color always, is the presidential color. It represents the office of the president and the sitting president. That is to the leftmost. In the formation of the mast color, it's on the right, because in the military tradition, the senior is always to the right. Followed by the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, which is the second most senior. In the Defense Force, the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment was the first commission formation, so it is the most senior formation. Followed by the second commission formation, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, then the Trinidad and Tobago Air Guard.
Now, there's something in the program that we'll be looking forward to, the breaking of the president's standard. Take me through that, please. What does that mean?
So the president's standard, that flag that flies, indicates the presence of the sitting president. So it would be located just next to the national flag. It's currently not on screen, but on the arrival of Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, the standard will be broken by a petty officer signaller of the Coast Guard. Again, that is tradition. So it's usually a petty officer of the Coast Guard that does it. It would have been a petty officer at Independence that did it. So the tradition would have just carried on. And that standard would be broken to indicate the president's arrival. It would then be secured on the departure of the incoming president.
And sometimes we can find a word entering the lexicon, and those who are in the know, they know it, and then others get around to it. So read and spell for me. Define breaking the standard, please. What does it mean for the standard to be broken?
So while most flags or any banner that is flying would usually be hoisted to that position on top of the mast, unfurled, as in open, this standard is tied such that it is hoisted, tied by rope, and a sharp tug at the top of the mast, as you will, is what would unfurl the standard. So it's a bit of a technique in it as well.
And even how it is you tie it to go up, because I've seen individuals try to break a flag or and there's a tug, and while it's happening, they're getting a little more nervous.
Yeah. So it has to be tied with something along the lines of a slip knot, right? And in the Coast Guard, we're all too versed in types of knots and rigging, as you would imagine, right? So that person who prepares the standard for hoisting has to be very particular to ensure that the appropriate knot is used, so that upon tugging at the line, it comes loose and it unfurls at the top of the mast.
So being able to speak to the appropriate knot, the appropriate technique, I want to ask you a little bit, Ms. Dorset, about the tenor. So one of the things that the individuals look forward to is the inaugural speech. What are some of the things that are covered during that inaugural speech, or have been covered rather, by past presidents?
Well, I suppose the state of the nation, but in such a way as not to get into the politics of the thing, because the presidency is supposed to be apolitical, okay? And the presidents would have a particular idea that they may want to put before the nation. And very often it has to do with the nation's children, the young people of the nation.
And I see we have the guard of honor standing at attention now. We are we are witnessing
Ladies and
the
gentlemen, please
entrance
stand
of
for
the
the arrival of
president-elect.
Miss Christine Kangaloo, President-elect, and Mr. Cohen Garcia.
So we see the crowd, they are welcoming the president-elect as well as her spouse. They have arrived, so we are in the midst of it, Lieutenant Khan.
Indeed, indeed. So the guard commander would have brought the guard to attention as a signal of respect, as a mark of respect to the president-elect on her arrival.
So the guard commander, they've ordered the guard to attention. They've saluted, and now we are getting ready for the arrival of the Chief Justice.
Indeed. So the guard would have been instructed to go back to the stand at ease position. They would then be brought to attention again on the arrival of the Chief Justice.
And a little earlier we were talking about civics, we were talking about a sense of national pride, knowing what happens in your country, to be able to speak that language as opposed to just, well, I know it happened at some point in time, but I really think this is going to make a mark on individuals, especially those from our nation's schools, to say that I was there when this took place. What are your thoughts on that, Ms. Dorset?
I think it is very important, and I'm very happy to see such a large representation of school children at this event, because I believe that with all the things that are happening in the world, standards are dropping and so on, it is important for us to plant the seed of nationhood in the young people. And I would say even from kindergarten. You can't wait until the tree is bent and then try to put a stake to pull it back. So from the very earliest time, I say even kindergarten, there are ways you can introduce protocol and nationhood to children.
Because it's not as though there's a vacuum there. Something will fill that void.
Something is going to fill the void. And I believe Trinidad and Tobago has, not I believe, I know that Trinidad and Tobago has contributed so much to the international development. We owe it to our children to give them the opportunities to participate in nation building, correcting things which have gone off the mark, and also helping them to restore what some of the things that seem to be slipping through our fingers. But we have to capture those things, recapture those things, and build. Build, bearing in mind that the world is changing, but we have a say in what happens in the world. We are not to just let things happen to us. We must contribute. We have contributed as a nation to many things that have happened worldwide.
And in terms of that level of contribution, what decides or who decides who contributes of themselves to the honor guard? Is it a point of pride that I was able to be there? What are some of the factors that take place?
There are certainly some who may volunteer. Some are, as we do it in the military, detailed for the function. But there is certainly a sense of pride in being able to say that you were part of something. An inauguration is not every day, right? It doesn't happen all the time. You see here.
And we
the
have another arrival. This is the arrival of the Chief Justice.
Yeah. So Lieutenant Commander Frederick once again would have brought the guard to the attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I invite you to stand.
And notice they are arriving in order of seniority.
Yes.
The least not important, but lesser rank, and then higher rank and highest rank.
So that also will, I guess, lead to how it impacts how people depart. But
Yes.
we make way for the arrival of the Chief Justice and his wife.
So the most important person in terms of rank would arrive last and would leave first.
So there we see the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, or RTT, and Mrs. Archie.
So we have here the Honorable Prime Minister.
Please remain standing as we
Ascending order of seniority.
Christopher Garlick, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Sharon Lowe.
And you notice that the Prime Minister is on the right of his spouse. Should change that.
Please be seated.
And it is interesting looking at, yes, we have individuals clapping and congratulating, but part of the landscape I think we deal with now is there are also individuals taking footage. So as opposed to just saying, okay, well, I was there, I remember I was there, there's also that aspect of it. So we await the arrival of Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and then we will have that breaking of the President's standard that you would have spoken to, Lieutenant Khan.
Definitely. So the President, of course, being the head of state, is number one on the table of precedence for Trinidad and Tobago. So she waits on no one, essentially. Right? When she arrives, this parade that would have been formed up in honor of the transition between herself and the president-elect would then pay their respect a bit differently, because the commander would instruct that a presidential salute is given.
You might want to explain presidential salute.
So while each person would have attended, Lieutenant Commander Frederick would have called the guard to attention in acknowledgement of their arrival. What he will do is have a presidential salute given, which would entail all the guard delivering a drill movement in terms of a salute, those with rifles as well as swords, and the color will be draped and lowered. As a sign of respect to Her Excellency, it will be flourished in front of the individuals bearing it, and the national anthem will be simultaneously played.
And we are getting ready for that. We see the outriders, we hear the sirens, so we are getting ready for the Commander-in-Chief.
Indeed. Indeed. We should also see the mounted branch make their appearance.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Presidential salute! Present! Out!
Please be seated.
And now we're seeing people being allowed to take their seats.
Your Excellency Paula May Weeks, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago
And the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Sharon Rowley. The Honorable the Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Denise Rodriguez Archie. Ms. Christine Carla Kangaloo, President-elect of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mr. Cohen Garcia. Mr. Nigel De Freitas, President of the Senate, and Mrs. Shana De Freitas. Mrs. Bridget Aniset George, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Mr. Newman George. Members of Cabinet and other government ministers. The Honorable Farley Augustine, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. The Honorable
Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Leader of the Opposition, and Dr. Gregory Bissessar. Your Excellencies, heads of diplomatic missions accredited to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the judiciary, the Right Reverend Claude Barclay, Bishop of Trinidad and Tobago, Pundit Lloyd Mukram Sergiu, President of the Interreligious Organization, members of Parliament, members of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mesdames et Messieurs, heads of international organizations accredited to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the inauguration ceremony of the 7th President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Today signifies another momentous occasion in the history of our young, independent nation, wherein we will witness the passing of the baton from this country's first woman and humble first servant to the second woman who will be the holder of the highest office. I would now take this opportunity, with a leave of Her Excellency, to begin the program with an invocation by Chief Ricardo Barrett Hernandez of the Santa Rosa First Peoples and a prayer by Pundit Lloyd Mukram Sergiu, President of the Interreligious Organization. So can we please stand?
Please be seated for the prayer. Please be seated. Thank you. Your Excellency Paula May Weeks, outgoing President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, President-elect Mrs. Kangaloo, the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Chief Justice, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I greet you in the indigenous languages of the Lokono, the Cariña, and the Waraus of this land, Kairi, Trinidad and Tobago, as I say to you, Sato Morocco, Sato Kasakabo, Mabrika Mabrika, Yakera Wetu, Yakera Okonai. It is an honor for the First Peoples to be invited to bring this invocation at this auspicious occasion of the inauguration of the 7th President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Let us put ourselves in the presence of our Creator God. As in the tradition of the First Peoples, we first acknowledge the great ancestors on whose shoulders we stand and pay our respects to our present leaders. We come from different ethnicities, cultural practices, and religious beliefs, and our understanding of the Creator manifests itself in different forms. Some say, I am that I am, Jehovah, Allah, Olodumare, Brahma, and this is just a few among many other names. It is the same energy that reveals to us what is good and motivates us to function with understanding and justice. May the Great Spirit, who has given the planet Earth, or Mother Earth as we say to human beings, to live and occupy as caretakers with an eternal duty to protect and nurture its sacredness. Human beings are allowed to live and produce on Mother Earth only through sustainable means. The Great Spirit has created all things, everything on earth with a purpose. Every disease has a herb to heal it, and every person a mission. Our President-elect is moving from one worthy mission into another purposeful mission of service to our beloved country. As we burn the sacred fires in thanksgiving for the beauty of the benevolence of the earth and its produce, the harvest of the seas, the harvest of the fields, the fruits of the trees, the provisions of the earth, all providing nourishment for the population over which this incoming president will have authority. As we send our prayer from earth to heaven, may the Great Spirit, we thank you for the energy of the sun, the wind and the rain. We thank you for our senses that we can see, hear, smell, feel, and taste, which comes from your creation. As the earth refreshes itself with all these intangibles, but powerful auras that we cannot see, so may our president-elect be spiritually energized, and may all our hearts become channels of peace, healing, and protection among all peoples without discrimination, so that the necessary supports would be available to her. We lift her up before you, O Great Spirit, Tamushi Adayali Wachinachi, asking that you fill her with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to function in this great position of leadership that you have placed her. May she also learn from the wisdom of those who have traversed the path before, so that decisions in good and turbulent times will result in peace. Great Spirit, hear our prayer as we send our fragrant prayers to you into the atmosphere. We call upon the spirits of peace, the spirit of love, the spirit of abundance, the spirit of cleansing, the spirit of benevolence to receive our prayer. As we send our prayer from the lowest earth to the highest heaven, and we ask that the guardian spirits or the guardian angels, those of the east, those of the west, those of the north, and those of the south, bear witness to our prayer. Come, Holy Spirit, come, and fill us all with thyself, and enkindle within us the fires of your divine love. Send forth your Spirit, Almighty God, that we all shall be recreated, and you, O God, will renew the face of the earth. Ehe, Papa, Tamushi, Adayali, Wachinachi, Ehe.
Now have funded program secretary of the IRO.
Your Excellencies, Paula May Weeks and President-elect Christine Kangaloo, our Honorable Prime Minister and the Chief Justice, all protocols observed. On this very auspicious day, in this very beautiful Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, may we all please stand as we bow our heads in divine submission in prayer. Dear God, we thy children are traveling by many right roads to the abode of light as we celebrate the inauguration of President-elect of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency, Ms. Christine Kangaloo. Guide us all onto the highway of self-knowledge, to which all paths of true religious beliefs eventually lead. In this most beautiful land of Trinidad and Tobago, our diverse religious are branches of thy one immeasurable tree of truth. May we all enjoy the sweet fruits of soul realization that hangs from the bowl of the scriptures of every clime and every time. Teach us to chant in harmony, O Lord, the countless expressions of your supreme devotion to thee. In thy temple of the earth, in a chorus of many accented voices, we are singing only to thee, O Lord. Now that you have brought us this far, grant us your divine helping hand to move forward in peace and harmony. Let not the absence of peace be a constraint to our human and social development, as evidenced in many other parts of the world. Kindly guide us, O Lord. Guide our leaders, our beloved President-elect, our Prime Minister and his cabinet, to lead our nation with great regard for human life and dignity, with love and justice, and each of us will be filled with a sense of belonging and sharing. Dear God, bless us to become a land of loving and caring for all those whom we encounter in our daily lives. Enable our government to go forward to noble work, and let them respond with patience in circumstances where less than intelligent behavior is on display. Grant our President-elect the mental, physical, and spiritual capacity to guide us forward in peace and prosperity and harmony. Bless us all with success and return us all safely to our homes and families. All of this we ask in your most holy and divine name. Thank you very much. You may be seated.
And thank you very much to Pundit Lloyd Mukram Serju, President of the Interreligious Organization, and Chief Ricardo Barra Fernandez of the Santa Rosa First Peoples. Thank you for the blessings. And at this particular time, we will be blessed with some beautiful voices. The choir you are about to hear was formed in 1975 out of an amalgam of the Southern Light Orchestra and the San Fernando Ladies Choir, the Shan Sewell Singers. Under the direction of well-known music aficionado Pat Bishop and a distinguished Welsh musician, Shan Carlin, this choir has become one of the most prestigious choirs in Trinidad and Tobago. For today's performance,
and we are getting ready to go to a musical interlude, and I think it's a really nice touch to have the Southerners Choir at this, the swearing-in ceremony of the 7th President of Trinidad and Tobago, someone who is a daughter of the Southland, who would have attended St. Joseph Convent, San Fernando, and they're going to be doing a rendition from Melanie Hudson, I Will Always Be There For You.
Even though my older children, they try to Trinity God must love you, they say. Hello, I want just rise and embrace you, protecting my children in every way. Even when you fight and argue about different fathers, remember, the middle class brought them straight to my door. Mama never worry about no race, I just love them. And so me blood is boiled when they start to war. I will always be there for you, no matter what you do, what pain you're going through. I will always be there for you. I will be, I will be, I will be, I will be, I will be always there for you. Be there for you. If you really want to make your old lady happy, I tell you. If you really want to fill me with joy, full of joy, all you got to do is start looking out for each other. Man and woman, check for the girls and boys. For your seeds and then run like crazy, you're crazy. I want to see you turn and commit your heart. And those of you who choose to leave all the rest to your duty. Foolishness will only tear us apart, no matter what you do. I will always be there for you. No matter what you do, whatever the pain that you are going through, I will always be there for you. I will be there. I will be. I will be. I will be. I will be always there for you. There for you.
There we just had members of the Southerners Choir performing Melanie Hudson's a song from 1992, still pertinent today, or should we say Melanie Lebari rather. I Will Always Be There For You, and a song that is especially pertinent at an occasion like this.
Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, to administer the oath of office to Ms. Christine Carla Kangaloo, the President-elect. And this will be witnessed by
Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
I, Christine Carla Kangaloo, do solemnly swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, and to the best of my ability, preserve and defend the Constitution and the law, that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge the functions of President, and will devote myself to the service and well-being of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Please stand for the presidential salute, the national anthem, and a 21-gun salute.
Fellow citizens, distinguished guests, to receive her first presidential salute, I have the signal honor, and it is with tremendous pleasure that I present the 7th President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo.
Presidential salute. Present. Go!
Please be seated for the inspection of the Guard of Honor.
So we've just had the national anthem with the 21-gun salute. Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, will inspect the Guard of Honor, accompanied by the Chief of Defense Staff and Guard Commander.
So Lieutenant Commander Frederick would have just reported to Her Excellency that the Guard is formed up in her honor and awaiting her inspection. And Her Excellency, accompanied by the Chief of Defense Staff, would now walk past and review the troops on parade.
may I please have your permission to carry on?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Well, it's time to be serenaded once again. Doing Merchants, Let Us Build a Nation Together. Please welcome back to the stage the Southern Airs Choir.
Because this is our land. Come my brother, come my sister, let
It is said, alone we can do so much, together we can do so much more. Let us build a nation together, Merchant, sung by the Southern Airs Choir and led by Michelle Dowrich. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor to invite Her Excellency Christine Carla Kangaloo, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, to deliver her inaugural address. Please stand.
Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley. Oh, please be seated. Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, MP, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Sharon Rowley. The Honorable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Denise Rodriguez Archie. Her Excellency Paula Mae Weeks, ORTT, former President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Senator the Honorable Nigel de Freitas, President of the Senate, and Mrs. Shana de Freitas. The Honorable Mrs. Bridget Anisette George, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Mr. Newman George. Ministers of Cabinet, the Honorable Farley Augustine, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisessa, MP, Leader of the Opposition, and Dr. Gregory Bisessa, Your Excellencies and representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the media, members of Parliament, members of the judiciary, all other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our nation's school children, my fellow citizens. It is March the 20th, 2023, and Trinidad and Tobago has just installed its 7th president. The ceremony by which we have done so is the result of the hard work and dedication of a large number of persons to whom the country owes a tremendous debt this morning. And the very first thing I should like to do as I begin this term of the country's 7th presidency is to say thank you to all the hands that have pulled together to make today's ceremony happen. I would like to thank especially Her Excellency President Paula Mae Weeks. As new head of state, I am sure that I am constitutionally authorized to act on behalf of the entire country in thanking President Weeks for her noble and selfless service over the last 5 years. And I do so unreservedly. But outside of constitutional entitlements, and simply as a human being, I want to thank President Weeks for the kindness and the empathy that she has shown to me, especially over the past few weeks, in helping me to prepare, not just for today's ceremony, but also for the term of office that lies before me. Madam President, you have my deepest and my sincere gratitude. Permit me as well to express my gratitude to the Electoral College for having elected me to serve as the country's 7th head of state. The feelings which have overwhelmed me since my election are simply too much to put into words. All that I can do in return is to undertake to strain every muscle to vindicate the college's confidence in me, and I promise to do so. When I was growing up, the number 7 was considered a lucky number. When teachers would hand out raffle sheets for us to take chances to raise funds for school, I would always select 7 as my number. Insofar as presidents go, the Electoral College has selected me to be our country's number 7. And if in time history were to show my selection to have been a lucky one, let one thing be absolutely clear. That will only have been so because of the 6 dedicated and devoted men and women who have preceded me in this office. My first request as new head of state is that you therefore join me in expressing our country's collective thanks to these 6 outstanding sons and daughters. And so, allow me, on behalf of a grateful and a beholden nation, to pay tribute today to His Excellency President Ellis Clark for his intellect and his courtliness. Allow me, on your behalf, to pay tribute to His Excellency President Noor Hassan Ali for his steadiness and his dignity. Allow me to pay tribute to His Excellency President Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson for his pioneering and his gallantry. Allow me to pay tribute to His Excellency President George Maxwell Richards for his erudition and his ingenuity. Allow me to pay tribute to His Excellency President Anthony Carmona for his passionate love of country and his vitality. And allow me to pay tribute to Her Excellency President Paula Mae Weeks for the clearness of her convictions and for her fortitude. By virtue of the efforts of these, our 6 previous presidents, this country has written an impressive presidential past. Today, we come together to start writing a further chapter in our presidential history. Permit me now to share with you a little of what I hope that future will look like. One of the questions which invariably emerges whenever the occasion for the election of a president arises is the role of the president in the first place. Through our collective fault, 47 years after our nation attained Republican status, significant portions of our citizenry remain unclear about precisely what the role of the president is. During my term, I would like to continue the work begun by my predecessors in trying to demystify the role. I think that a good place to start is at the level of our primary school children, many of whom are here today. One of our nation's founders spoke of the future of our nation being in our children's school bags. I believe that heightening awareness at the primary school level about the role of the president will help promote a better understanding of the presidency. I am aware of at least one primary school in South Trinidad, the San Fernando Girls Government Primary School Standard 4 Sing, that has embarked on a project to heighten awareness about the role of the president. So long as that school's principal permits, I should be very happy to meet with the students in Standard 4 Sing to discuss with them how they and their teachers might be able to help to lead and spread projects like theirs across the country. This is one of the things that I hope the presidential future that we are starting to write today will look like. a future in which there is a population that is better informed about the presidency and that is therefore better able to hold it to account. Another means through which I believe the youth and those who interact directly with them can come to the country's aid, particularly in this season of rising crime, is through the model provided by the Steel Band movement in its preparations for Panorama. For decades, there have been those who have been telling us that the discipline and the structure that the Panyard brings into the lives of young people each year in the lead up to Carnival combine to create one of the most effective youth delinquency prevention programs available in the country. As president, I will be anxious to meet with and listen to those voices, as I will be to use the voice of my own office to advocate for the adoption in our communities of youth programs based on the Panyard model, not just limited to specific periods in the year, but on a year-round basis. This is another aspect of the presidential future I envision, a future in which the Office of the President continues to collaborate with communities to explore and advocate for means by which our young people can be steered towards endeavors that are glorious and life-giving and away from the allure of antisocial behaviors. As our democracy and our society mature, there is an increasing demand for our leaders to become more and more accessible. The Office of President is no exception. There are certain levels of security that attend the Office of President, including as the President moves around in public spaces and, as many of us have experienced, on the nation's roads. There are also certain protocols that guide and often limit how citizens interact with the President. I ask the country to understand and to bear with these arrangements. In the main, they are necessary to preserve the dignity of the office and the safety of its occupant. But they are not immutable, and they should not be inflexible. We must be careful not to make the mistake of elevating these arrangements into ends in themselves, and we must avoid at all costs conscripting them into the dubious service of making the highest office in the land also the most remote office in the land. I therefore undertake during my term in office to build on the work of my predecessors and to examine ways of modernizing the protocols that govern how citizens relate with the office and vice versa. One of the ways in which I would like to see the Office of President made more and more accessible is by having its facilities put to even greater use in hosting cultural, educational, and artistic ventures, particularly among the youth. For example, I would like to see the bandstand put to regular use as a platform for new and emerging young artists. I would like to see the main ballroom and the grounds at President's House used to host displays such as art exhibitions by primary and secondary school students. And I would like to see the public areas at President's House opened up to facilitate endeavors such as book club meetings and programs to introduce young people to music. As the preeminent office of public service in the country, I would like to see President's House and its grounds serve the public by becoming a cradle for intellectual, cultural, and artistic exploration among our youth, and in so doing, helping to improve observation, perception, and communication skills among young people. I have described the Office of the President as the preeminent office of public service in the country. That is no accidental description, and it must be no pie-in-the-sky ambition. It is my intention to build on the work begun by my predecessors and to complete the transformation of the Office of the President into a fully modernized, highly efficient, and effectively run organization, commensurate with its status and with the rightful expectation of the public whom it serves. I believe that the office of President should serve as a model to all other public service institutions in this country of how to conduct the public's business both internally and externally. I shall spare no effort in this regard. One of the initiatives that I feel particularly passionate about pursuing is putting together an archive of our presidential history and of the customs and the conventions that attend the office of President. Such an archive is badly needed. Without it, I have had to rely on the willingness, the patience, and the generosity of volunteers, both in and outside of the office of the President, to work out what to expect, both in the lead up to today's inauguration and thereafter during the term of office that lies ahead. I would very much like to see the office develop its own recorded, documented history and practices from which not only future presidents, but the entire nation can benefit. This will not only help promote a better understanding of the presidency, but it will also save us from losing an important part of our history. And so, looking ahead to the 7th presidency of Trinidad and Tobago, some of the things I hope to see are a demystification of the role of the President, advocacy for the adoption in our communities of year-round youth delinquency prevention programs like the Panyard model, protocols attending the office that are refined and modernized to better reflect our culture and our history, a President who by virtue of these reformed protocols becomes more and more accessible to and less isolated from the public, an office that becomes a cradle of intellectual, cultural, and artistic exploration among the youth, an office that is modernized inside and out, and an office that records and preserves our presidential history and the customs and conventions of the office. I know that I am setting the 7th presidency no small task when I identify these as among its goals. I do so only because I truly believe that Trinidad and Tobago deserves no less, and that we are in a time and in a place where no less will suffice. Rest assured that I am not in the least bit naive about the struggles that the office will face in attempting to accomplish these goals. In pursuing them, the office will be coming up against entrenched systems and ways of doing things. But if there is one thing of which you can be sure, it is that as your president, I will fight to the end to make the office work better for all of us. The means by which I propose to achieve these goals and to do all of these things is simple: relentless advocacy. I will devote all of my energy to advocating for better conditions, for better arrangements, for better platforms, and for better opportunities for all. But let us be clear, I am not of the view that relentlessness means that I must be combative or belligerent. Far from it. That is not my way. My way is to be your diplomat-in-chief, making the case for a better Trinidad and Tobago firmly, but without acrimony or bitterness. My words do not need to be shouted in the public square. There's already too much shouting going on in our country today. I believe that we all need to be calmer and more reflective, and I propose to lead in that regard by example. I do not for one second believe that I, or indeed any president, can achieve these goals alone. A successful presidency is the result of a successful collaboration between the office and the citizenry. In my particular case, I have listened carefully to the conversation that preceded my election to this office, and I am not at all unmindful of the fact that there are those who have expressed disquiet with my occupying this new role, and for who, for one reason or another, might not currently be fully on board with assisting me to achieve these goals. I know that there have been voices from certain quarters that have given the impression that such collaboration might not be as easily forthcoming as one might have hoped. To any and every such voice, I repeat Merchant's invitation in the song, so beautifully sung this morning by my beloved Southerners Choir, to let us forget spites and grudges and concentrate, and to come, let us sit and try to relate. I assure all who have not yet signed on to the idea of my presidency that, in the words of Melanie Hudson, so movingly brought to life this morning, I will always be there for you, no matter what you do, whatever joy or pain that you are going through. For what all of us have to realize, as Ms. Hudson reminds us, is that whatever grief and sadness we bring into each other's households, in the end, we are all, and we are still, this country's daughters and sons. And so, I pledge to work with and to respect all citizens, even and especially those who might not yet wish to work with me, to achieve the goals that I have shared with the country today. There are those whom I know I do not need to win over as I begin my term. I begin with my husband and the source of my strength for the last 24 years, Kerwin Garcia. He has always been my first gentleman, and now he is also yours. I read somewhere recently that when you make room for the women to thrive, the entire household benefits. I thank him for making room for me to thrive. I hope and I pray that the whole of Trinidad and Tobago now benefits. I hope that he knows that as his reward, I will be leaning on him heavily for help with my advocacy for the various initiatives I have outlined in this address, particularly in promoting the office of President as a cradle of intellectual, cultural, and artistic exploration among the youth, an initiative in which I know he's deeply interested. I thank him in advance for his assistance in this area. I also thank my mother, Barbara, who on the cusp of her 95th birthday has braved the crowds to be here for me today, as she has been for every event of my life. I thank my brothers, Keith, Wayne, David, and Colin, and all the members of my family for their undying love and support. To my father, Carlisle, and my brother, Wendell, and sister, Carol, who all left this earth too soon, I thank you for what your love has meant to me and the values you helped instill in me. To my loyal and loving friends, some of whom have traveled from abroad just to be here for this occasion, thank you for always having my back. To my church communities, both at Susamacha Presbyterian in San Fernando and St. Anne's RC in Port of Spain, your prayers and your faith have sustained me for my entire life. I beseech you both to continue to hold me constantly in prayer. And so, my fellow citizens, it is March the 20th, 2023, and Trinidad and Tobago has just installed its 7th president. When we close the book on this 7th presidency, may history smile upon us all and record that we were lucky to have been part of a huge collaborative effort. My fellow citizens, may God bless you, and may God bless Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
God! God! Point of order. Shoulder. Arms. Presidential salute. Present. Out.
We acknowledge the departure of Her Excellency Christine Carla Kangaloo, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and Mr. Cohen Garcia.
Difference. So we see the difference in order of departure now that we've had that transition from president-elect to president.
Yes, indeed. So now we see her, that's right. We see Her Excellency departing and now being flanked by the mounted branch. She is now the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So those ceremonial trappings, if you will, that would have accompanied the former president on her arrival would now accompany Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo on her departure.
And there was a lot that was spoken about in the inaugural address, but we are actually getting ready for the departure of the Prime Minister and his wife.
Yes. So the Honorable Prime Minister will, as the next in order of precedence, will now depart, followed by the Honorable Chief Justice, and then the former President, Her Excellency Paula May Weeks.
And speaking of the former President, Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, it was interesting looking at a few emotions playing on the face, especially while the inaugural address was going on. But one that seemed to really be going on was that there was a sense of pride, which is really good to see.
Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mrs. Rodriguez Archie.
But as mentioned, there were many points that were raised. One of those that I really appreciate, though, is that sense of Ubuntu, in the sense that I am because we are. And there was a term used, relentless advocacy, in a collaborative manner, as we see the Chief Justice and his wife getting ready to depart.
Indeed, DK. So it's interesting you mentioned the inaugural speech of Her Excellency. A couple of points did indeed stand out, among which she would have identified the ceremonial trappings of the office, etc., and a wish to modernize those. And I think it's important in terms of what she's stated she would like to do, because there is a fair degree of ignorance of the office itself and the rules of the office. So I definitely think it's a worthwhile endeavor to try to spread that awareness. And certainly you have to start from the children, you know, and she referenced Dr. Eric Williams in her speech. You know, the future of the nation is in the book bags of children.
And this even goes back to a conversation that we had a little earlier today, speaking about the importance of civics and having citizens of a country know roles, responsibilities, and where they fit into the overall scheme of things.
Right on. I mean, exactly right. Mrs. Dorset herself would have mentioned, you know, that sense of nationhood, that patriotism that sometimes seems a bit lacking in Trinidad and Tobago, to be quite honest. And I think the perspective is really, what are we proud of? What should we be proud of? So we have to have something to be proud of, and from what I took from the speech is an intent to build that pride.
Former President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
I think this is the first time she would have been addressed as such in this audience today. Former President of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, so she's now departing into whatever presidential retirement looks like. I can't say that I'm aware.
Perhaps this is when we lean on you a bit, Ms. Dorset, to give us an idea of some of the things that may take place.
She may write a book.
It's interesting.
It would be a good thing, I think. She were to write a book.
And even that would help with providing a certain level of access, because the idea is not necessarily to peel back the curtain too much, but at the same time create a little more awareness, a little more knowledge of some of these things.
And then as inspiration to others, and if I may be permitted to say, of the female variety. I don't fight that gender battle at all, but I think that it would be interesting. What she has to say would be interesting, and it will inspire young women, young girls, you know,
and
in that direction.
I take your point, because a little while ago, even President Kangaloo stated that in school, if you told her that she would be in the position that she's currently in, it would be more than just herself who would say that's not going to happen. So to be able, many times we're able to move into a position because we see that position being occupied, we see that thing being done. It seems impossible until it's done, says former President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela.
Inspiration for the succeeding generations.
And certainly Her Excellency Paula May Weeks would have provided that, because as the first president, the first head of state for our country, she literally blazed the trail.
You mean
female, sorry. She literally blazed the trail.
But there's some things that we'd be looking at, because there were itemized points that I don't necessarily say we want to judge by, but to remember that those points were made in this inaugural address in terms of adoption in communities, initiative based on the Panyal model, focusing on the role of education, including the role of the President's office, increasing that level of access, more of a focus on youth. And is this the 90-year-old mom that was being spoken about?
I didn't see. This one? Her mother? You mean
because President Kangaloo did speak about her mom being
I
present at everything, even though at this point in time she's on the
Well,
cusp of being 90.
I would imagine so, but I can't.
But the care being afforded, I think it is possible.
Yes, it is possible.
And that point of relentless advocacy in a manner that is collaborative, I think is something that cannot be underscored enough. Even looking at the music that was chosen, I personally got chills when the president was inspecting the Guard of Honor, and you're listening to the music that was played, two, the way that our music can be used in different applications, and then just the measure or the message in that song, who God bless, no man curse.
Yes.
So it's definitely something that we, there are different points, the different takeaways that we can have today. What are some of those for you, Ms. Dorset?
The acknowledgement that God is important in our nation. Or in our anthem, we sing, God bless our nation. But these are not just words, that's a prayer. Whenever we sing the anthem, it's a prayer, God bless our nation. It doesn't mean that we will be spared troubles, difficulties, but we are overcomers as long as we realize that there's a higher power. God bless our nation is not just a set of words, a string of words. God bless our nation. With the blessing would come some challenges, because then you're responsible. God bless you in a particular way. So as a responsible nation, you have to show the rest of the world how you function when you are blessed.
It's like someone saying you ask for patience. You don't just get patience. It just drops in your lap or your pocket or your heart. There are things that help you to build that like a muscle. So I take the point that you're saying.
This country is so blessed. We take many things for granted, but I think that the schools have a responsibility. The Ministry of Education, through the schools, have a responsibility to draw the attention of children, not at age 11, 12, 13, but even before that, to the beauty of the country that God has given us, and to the developments over time. We must not take these things for granted, because we are standing on the shoulders of those who went before us. And there are people who never went to school, but saw to it that the succeeding generations went to school. And we have to bear that in mind. We shouldn't take it for granted at all.
And in terms of not taking things for granted, looking at the decor for today, I believe is La Tropical, so Bernard Beckles, who would have also been a member of the Lydians. And just looking at the way things have come in, we've seen other MPs. We just saw the Minister for Planning, for National Security, as well as Energy and Energy Industries. We still on the rostrum have the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that honor guard is still there. They are in their colors. They are still standing resolute. And depending on how you look at them, you can actually use them, Lieutenant Khan, as ideal for some of the things that we've been speaking about, resilience and all of these sorts of things.
Definitely.
So what's happening with them now, though?
So the guard commander is making his preparations to have the guard march off. He's forming 3 ranks from 2. He's going to dress them.
I thought I just saw the Speaker of the House standing there with her husband.
Yes, sure.
But why is she still here?
I'm sure that will be addressed shortly.
So we see now the color officers dressing their colors in preparation to march off.
And all this is before the reception that will be taking place at the National Academy of the Performing Arts.
Yes, so those persons, those dignitaries that would have departed here would have undoubtedly gone across to Napa. Of course, Her Excellency would be waiting. She would not be brought in unless she's the last person to arrive and the first person to leave, such as the respect accorded to her office and her person once she occupies that office.
I think it's also a bit of a mental shift sometimes, especially if you're used to service, to have to say, okay, well, I'm still about service, but at the same time, these are some of the things that need to take place now.
Definitely.
And this has been the live broadcast of the inauguration of the 7th President of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo. And on behalf of my colleagues, Ms. Leonard Dorset, Lieutenant Dane Khan, we also had Ms. Gail P. Guy, as well as the rest of the crew. We want to thank you so much for joining us. The reception will be taking place at the National Academy of Performing Arts, as we said. But from here, this is the end of this leg of the journey. So we thank you so much for joining us and being a part of it.
By 20, 50 by 25.
This is Kyron Pollard. When you play, do it the legal way. Don't bet on illegal gaming.
Win up to $1,000 on the spot with NLCB's Cashpot Instant Win. For only $5 more on your regular Cashpot bet, you get 5 instant win numbers. If any of your instant win numbers match your Cashpot numbers in the corresponding panel, you can win up to $1,000 instantly. Ready for instant winnings? Then play Cashpot Instant Win today. Players must be 18 years and over. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to this morning's Playway Pick 2 and Pick 4 draw, supervised by independent auditors KPMG and presided over by the National Lotteries Control Board. Good luck, everyone.
Good morning. Welcome to the NLCB's Playway Pick 2 and Pick 4 draw for Monday, March 20th, 2023. First we'll draw this morning's Playway number. And the winning number is 19, the lucky mark horse. That number again, 19, the lucky mark horse. Our Mega Mix machine is loaded with a Mega Bonus Ball in each chamber. Should a Mega Bonus Ball call, you win $40 for every dollar wagered. Payouts on the Mega Ball, Mega Ultra Ball and the Mega Extreme Ball are unchanged. Remember, Mega options cost an additional $1 and you can play 1, 2 or 3 for more chances to win. And now for Mega Mix selection.